It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week, we're welcoming back the team from Ellipsis Productions. That's Cameron Gordon and Cora Hankey. They're here to share their fun experiences and insights and advice on documentary-style storytelling. You don't want to miss this because you want to tell your association story well. It is November 11th, 2024. Welcome to episode 262. Hey everybody, it's Monday, November 11th. We're well into fall and just a few weeks away from Thanksgiving. I know I'm looking forward to that long weekend. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Radio Free 501c. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and I'm a CAE and an ACNP. Thank you so much for joining us. To our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And if you haven't already, please take a moment and subscribe or follow us on your favorite service so you don't miss any of our future episodes. This week, I'm really happy to welcome back Cam Gordon and Cora Hankey, and they're going to be talking with us about documentary style storytelling. So before we dive into the topic, welcome back, Cam and Cora. And would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself? And we'll start with Cam.
Sure. Thanks so much for having us back, Cecilia. I'm Cameron Gordon. I started Ellipsis Productions, and I function primarily as a producer, and I run the business. My background is in documentary storytelling, initially in sports. So my first job out of college, I worked for NBC on the NBC Sports on the Olympics broadcast in Athens in 2004, telling stories about gymnasts competing. And at that point, it was, you had one chance to really make your mark on the Olympics as a gymnast, particularly female gymnast. And I found that so inspiring and learned how to do deep dive storytelling, and then eventually moved to New York City and worked for production company there, and again, still primarily in sports, but more, the big four. So a lot of NFL content, basketball, hockey, that sort of stuff. And then in 2013, I founded Ellipsis Productions, and we still do a lot of sports work, but we've grown to do some more television documentaries outside of sports. And recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've done a lot of work in the association community, and I really feel like there's a lot of depth there and a lot of room to do tremendous storytelling that benefits the goals of the association by using people's voices whose visions align with what the associations are trying to do. So that's really where we're bullish right now.
Excellent. That's great. And I know associations always have a good story to tell. Well, sometimes the good, the bad, and the ugly, but stories are great for communicating. So Cora, welcome back. Would you like to tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much. Really happy to be here. I have been with Ellipsis as a producer for the last 2 years, 3 years total of knowing and working with Cam. And I have a long background in a lot of different film and television industries, from reality TV to corporate production, sports. And I'm really happy that I found a home here at Ellipsis where we're doing a lot of interesting work, documentary work with associations, and telling stories like all around the country. It's been a really exciting time here, and I'm happy that we get to continue to tell stories and do it for anybody, anywhere, and a variety of topics that we cover. It's great.
Oh, that's great. And welcome back to you as well, Cora. I'm just laughing because your reality TV background is probably very useful in the association space, talking with people about what's going on at their organization. So as we start into our topic for the day of documentary storytelling, Cora, can you explain how a documentary is different from a movie?
I think I'll pass that one to Cam, actually, if that's okay. He might have a better answer with his experience than I might.
Okay, great. Well, over to Cam.
Sure. Well, I think there's probably some overlap. Maybe people use those words colloquially, right? So when you go to a movie theater, you could be watching a documentary, or some people call it a documentary film or whatever. But traditionally, a documentary is it's much closer to journalism and trying to tell stories that are true. Of course, there's no such thing as 100% true, and everybody has an agenda or a point of view. But generally, when you say movie, I think people are talking about something that is scripted, performed by actors, often fictitious or inspired by nonfiction events. But documentaries are really a deep dive into a specific storyline, and sometimes they are embed documentaries where you're sitting there with somebody where something is going to happen, or a group of people where that there's going to be a thing and you are a fly on the wall capturing that. Sometimes there's in-depth investigation type documentaries. So there's all sorts of different types of documentaries, and it's a pretty interesting world. And maybe I feel like now with streaming platforms and everything, and the incredible work that HBO and Netflix have done, there's a lot of creativity that has been brought to documentary storytelling, and it's not like 25, 30 years ago where there was like, okay, there's the BBC format of documentaries and there's kind of nothing else. I think it's been really impressive how the industry has evolved the art form of documentaries from top to bottom.
So, well, the reason I ask that is because I really want people to understand why we do documentaries. And to your point about nothing is 100% true. We try to be accurate, but we are trying to tell a story, or we're trying to tell a perspective of someone in a story. And what we're doing with the documentary is documenting. So we're documenting an event, like you said, or maybe we're documenting people's experiences, or documenting what an organization does, which is why documentary style is important. And I have to be honest, as much as I love a good action flick, my favorite is documentaries. If I can find a good nonfiction documentary, or even a docudrama where they have actors act out things that actually happen, I love that stuff because it's fascinating. And the more you watch, the more perspectives you get. So how can documentary filmmaking, or storytelling, I should say, documentary style storytelling, help an association get their message out?
Sure. I'll start. Maybe Corey, you can add. But I feel like the thing that I really love about association, well, there's many things, but I think, in regard to this specifically, you have a group of passionate association professionals who are very in tune with their members, and in many cases, the customers or people who benefit from the work that their members are doing. So with most of the associations we work with, there's a pretty solid understanding of who the people are who are being affected by the work of that association. And I feel like those are the voices that are really going to advance agendas and communicate the things that are important to those associations. And I feel like this is a pretty broad generic statement, but I think that when you really talk to the people who are affected by the issues that associations are trying to make change in or advance, then that's where you really can find inspiration in the work that the associations are trying to accomplish. And I feel like that is real life, right? And those are documentary stories when there is real life, and it doesn't have to be a 2-hour long documentary. You can tell a documentary story in 90 seconds when you embed yourself with a family or a person for a day and really showcase why they are having their lives are impacted by the work of the association.
So Cora, would you like to add to that? Yeah, so I guess I also agree with everything Cam said. Like it's these associations, or you're in the room with people that know so much about these different random things that are going on every day that maybe the general public doesn't think about, like recycling your cell phone, or how aviation works to transplant like organs around the country. Like there's so many things that are happening under the surface, and to be given the opportunity to tell a story with the people that are the most passionate about it and know everything on this topic, like it's really special. And we get the chance to take what they know and turn it into a story that the general public can watch and learn something about in a way that I think is really important for people to see stuff visually, because even though there might be like news written about it and stuff going out with journalism, there's something special about seeing a human being on the screen talking about something that maybe you never thought about before. And I think it adds a level of interest and empathy when it's done that way. And really, for associations to use documentary style filmmaking, I think is is especially important, especially right now when we're living in a world where everything is online and needs to be seen, and we have a shorter attention span.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing about the attention span is interesting because we keep saying it's getting shorter, yet some of the most popular podcasts are an hour or more in length. So that's an interesting thing trying to figure that out. But Cam, you looked like you had a comment.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that point too, which I think was really strong. From my perspective, I never felt comfortable telling my own stories. I've never felt like I can sit down and I can write. I'm a decent writer, but I would never go and write a screenplay. I would never go and orate about my experiences. But I feel like my comfort zone is helping other people tell their stories, and that's kind of a nice thing to do because I feel like a lot of people want to be seen, they want to be recognized. And I feel like you can accomplish that and make people feel special while also accomplishing goals of an association. I think that that's the kind of genuine, heartfelt type of story and I still believe that people are motivated and inspired and they love stories. I feel like stories have been a part of human tradition since the second we can communicate with each other. And I think that that's what separates us, of course, from every other species on this planet. And I think that that will remain true no matter how popular dancing TikToks are and all of that other stuff. I think that, with AI and all this other stuff that's happening, stories are what connect us to each other. And I think that, or maybe I'm naive, but I hope that that doesn't go away. And I feel like it's a really special thing to be able to help people tell their story.
Yeah. And I agree. As I've said many times on the show and just in conversation with people, I love a good story, especially if it's a ripping good yarn. Somebody's telling me about an experience they had, because it's really in the telling. So what are some of the steps? And Cam, if you could start off and then Cora contribute to this. What are some of the first steps that an organization should take in order to really tell a story well, like to get somebody to tell their story and then frame that story in a way that's compelling to an audience?
Yeah, great question. And I suspect this would apply beyond documentary storytelling because storytelling has to be such a key component of whatever associations are trying to communicate, particularly in their content plan, right? So this first step is identify your stories, know who are your champions, figure out who is eager to share this story, who feels as passionate about these issues as the professionals within your association do and the members of the association. So really trying to see who is just eager to tell me how much they love this cause or this goal and are just dying to get on camera and scream to the rooftops and let the rest of the world know how they feel. And we found those people. They are out there and they are the ones who are going to be convincing and compelling and they're going to love it. They're going to enjoy being a part of telling your association story because their goals align with yours. And once you identify those people, I'm not going to say it's easy because there's still a reason to come and hire Cora and me. But once you find those people, then it's a lot easier than trying to get blood from a turnip, right? Like you're never going to get passion and excitement out of somebody who just feels like whatever about what you're trying to say. But once you identify who those champions are, and again, they are out there, you just have to find them if you don't know them, then that's really the first main step.
So Cora, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Kim said too. Like, I think there's a lot of people that I've met in the last 3 years through these organizations, these associations that have like so much passion and so much knowledge, and it just seems not fair if they don't get to share it. So being able to sit down and understand why like some of these rules and regulations are in place is a lot of the time stems from these associations and their boards and meetings and lots of participation. So being able to sit down in a room with them and tell those stories is really important.
So we've identified the people we want to talk to and who have that passion and that energy. But how do we frame that story? I do a lot of focus groups and qualitative interviews, and I do a lot of questions for the podcast. I talk to people all the time and get them to tell me their story. So what are some good tips? What's some good advice for an association who wants to take that passion, turn it into a story that they can share? How do you develop the interview protocol? How do you develop the questions? What's a good way to do that?
Yeah. So, of course, research, knowing as much as you can about the person that you're sitting down and talking with is supremely important. Know why they care so deeply about this. I can give an example. About 6 or 7 months ago, we were filming with this family in New York City, and they were tremendous advocates for one of our association clients' agendas, one of their goals. And we walk in, we knew we did pre-interviews, we did Zoom calls with them before we brought the crew in and started filming, and we knew what made them tick. But, having the right questions with emotional resonance, because that's where you really want to get to, right? You want to get to discovering or identifying the emotion that makes them feel so passionately about this topic, and then kind of poking it a little bit and giving them, making them kind of sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable, not in a bad way, of course, but like making them really dig deep into their feelings about this. And I was sitting down interviewing the mother in this family, and she said when she discovered this, I can't tell you what it is, but when she discovered this thing from our association client, it was the best day of her life, and even better. She was joking, it was better than the day she got married and the day she had her kids. Like, it was that impactful for her. And it wasn't really, but you can kind of get her to say that. The audience knows that's not true, but she has this genuine warmth about it because you're able to kind of tug on the right string and get her to feel how positively she feels about it. And that's an advocate that is, you couldn't pay for that. No actor is going to give you that. And if they could, the audience is going to see right through it. This is genuine. This is true love. And it's, all about understanding who you're speaking with. And that, Cora and I have done interviews with Nobel Prize winners and presidents of other countries, and Fortune 500 CEOs, and then, people who are regular Americans, and working class people, and all that, and everything in between. And it's all the same. It's understanding who you're talking with, what makes them tick, why they feel passionate about this, and making them feel comfortable. You don't want to intimidate anybody. Sometimes it's really hard to sit down and there's a big camera and a bunch of crew people, and there's a big fuss made about you. If you haven't done that a lot, that's not easy. That is very hard. So you have to make people feel comfortable. You have to understand. You have to, get to know them a little bit before you bring them into this uncomfortable situation. Make sure they understand what to expect, and then really kind of make it conversational. Make everything else go away. Yes, the cameras are there. Make it all go away. And I think, again, this does apply beyond documentary storytelling. Anything with a camera, because you can really use this anytime you're doing an interview. If you're doing an interview for a newsletter and it's getting transcribed, it's really the same thing. You want to make sure that you build that connection, ask the right questions, find out what is the emotional connection between what they're feeling and the goal that you have as an association.
That's an excellent point. Knowing your interviewee, getting them comfortable. What sort of prep should you do for the person that you're talking to? Like, what sort of prep should they do? Like, do you give them questions in advance? Do you tell them the flow of the interview? How does that work?
Cora, I'm going to let you do this because Cora does most of the prep for us.
One of the things that we try to give everyone a heads up about is that it is better if these interviews are conversational and feel casual and comfortable. So we actually tell them the opposite of preparing. We say, here's the list, feel free to review it, but don't memorize anything. Don't over prepare, because that oftentimes makes people a little uncomfortable, or they get nervous if they can't remember what they wrote down. So really going into these interviews and just making sure that our interviewees are comfortable, and they might have an idea of what we're going to ask them, but we're not throwing anything at them that they don't already have an answer to. So that's, I think, one of the keys, is that, we're not trying to trick them. We're not asking them any loaded questions. We're really just asking them things that they already know and they feel, and it's our job to sort of get that out of them in a comfortable, casual way. So it doesn't feel like they're reading off of a teleprompter or reading off of their notes.
And making it natural. I agree. It's, in a way, you can look at podcasts as mini documentaries, because we're talking with people and getting their input and perspective on things. And so a lot of those steps are things that I do. And I know other podcast hosts that I'm connected to do the same thing. You want people to feel comfortable, but you also want it to be relaxed and really be more of a conversation. one of the things I like to do is develop questions based on the flow of the conversation, not just the ones that people may be thinking about. And frankly, I don't give questions in advance because it's a conversation. We know what we're going to talk about. We do a little prep right before we hit record, but generally people know what to expect because I send them some information before the podcast. But do either of you want to jump in and share a technique about how do you develop a question in the flow of the conversation that keeps them going and doesn't make them feel like it's a gotcha question?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I think people, because you want to keep it conversational, you don't want to be staring at a list of questions that you're about to ask, right? That's not personal. That's not developing a rapport. You don't have to sound, as an interviewer, you don't have to be the expert here. You have to, and you do an excellent job of that, Cecilia. You have to trust, or you have to show the person that you're talking to that you respect their expertise, right? And so you as the interviewer don't have to be perfect. The interviewee doesn't have to be perfect. But if you are showing that you've done the research and you have a general sense of what the conversation should be about, you're not referencing, your question all the time. You can look at notes periodically, but you show them that respect and you show them that you understand that they are the subject matter expert and they know what they're talking about and you respect that. That goes a long way. And then really listening, I feel like, when I first started doing interviews a million years ago, I was so nervous sitting there talking to somebody. I wasn't listening to what they were saying. I was thinking about what I was going to ask next. And the best question you can ask is the follow-up question. Oftentimes, the first question you ask, you're not going to get what you need. So you need to either reiterate that question in a different way, rephrasing it, or maybe the most important thing that they talked about, you dive deeper and then you ask another follow-up question. You follow that line as far as it goes until you get what you need and the response that you need. And you're going to get stuff you didn't expect to get. But following up and asking great follow-up questions, which would never be on your initial question list anyway, is one of the most important things. And then the other trick that we use when you're getting into those feelings with somebody, people hate silence. They do not like the awkwardness of nobody speaking. So if you have it as an interviewer, if you have it within yourself when you're on the edge, or somebody's got something else to say, sometimes actually not asking a question is the appropriate way to move forward there. And you can sit there and look at them kindly after they finish a thought, but they've got something else to say. Give it an uncomfortable 10, 15 seconds. See what they say next. Almost all the time, they're going to say something profound that you didn't expect. And a lot of times it's going to align with exactly with your goals. And we do that often. And some of the best sound bites I've ever got in my career have not been from me asking questions. They've been from me looking at them expectantly, but not rudely, and seeing what they're going to say next.
That is such a wonderful tip. I am glad you said that because people assume silence means there's no comment, where I assume silence is somebody thinking. And then maybe sometimes, depending on what you're talking about, they might be kind of working up the courage to say what they want to say, what's on their mind. They want to say it well. So, Cora, do you want to add anything on that?
Not too much, just that all of these things that Cam just spoke on, like I also learned when I started working with Ellipsis and looking back at 2 years ago when I did my first sit down in-person interview, I think those were some of the mistakes that I made, is constantly thinking of what's next. Here are my bullet points of what I need, when in reality, you need to listen and have a conversation and hear their story, and just keep in the back of your head what you want to get, but you're going to be surprised when you leave a few moments of silence in between. And taking all of that advice from Cam to where I am today, I had my first interview this year where I got real emotion and a couple tears out of somebody, not torturing them. But it does feel like an accomplishment to feel like somebody felt comfortable enough, close with you enough to let that emotion out. And it's because they felt like you were treating them like a human being and not like they were under a microscope. And I think that's so important when you're interviewing anybody.
Yeah, and allowing people. Oh, sorry, Philly, but allowing.
I was just going to say, Cam, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, allowing people to be vulnerable and giving them that space to, and them building that trust with somebody that you're not going to take advantage of what they're saying, right? That you're not going to cut and paste what their words and create something that's not authentic and true to them. but you're making them feel like you showing that respect and showing that respect for their vulnerability and giving them a platform. I think once you build that rapport, you can't do it on the first question, like that trick of, awkward, uncomfortable silence. But once you've built in and shown them that you have this deference and respect for their expertise, and you built that rapport, then let them talk. Like nobody's here to hear me as the interviewer. They don't care about me. I don't want them to care about me. I want them to care about the interviewee.
Right. Yeah, that's also a great tip too. While people do podcasts and yes, they're the host and maybe they want to get their name out too, it really isn't about what the podcast host or the interviewer has to say. It's really about what the guest has to say and pulling that strong story out into the world so people can hear it. Fortunately, we don't have any tears on Radio Free 501c. We usually have laughter, which is good. If an association wants to start doing this, because we're saying documentary style storytelling, so we don't have to do a 90-minute, 2-hour documentary or even a docu-series. What we can do documentary style though. So what are some things that an association should consider? Because you have to plan these out. You can't just say, oh, we're going to just bring our camera phone and ask people to tell us things. You really have to think it out and you really have to have a set time to do it. So what are some things an association should consider when they're planning to do documentary style shorts, let's say, for lack of a better thing? Maybe they want to interview somebody for 30 or 45 minutes and pull it into little short stories. So what are some things they need to consider if they're not doing this yet?
Yeah, excellent question. So first, as we discussed, of course, know your audience, figure out not your content audience, but your association audience. Know who your champions are. Once you've established that, you've identified who your subject or subjects are, really writing out a brief, even if it's an internal brief, even if it's just for yourself, putting on paper, here's what I want to accomplish with this story. And that will frame how you go about attempting it. And I think it goes back in a lot of ways to what we discussed last time, where the in-between is ineffective, right? You can hire somebody like us, like Ellipsis, and do really high-end documentary style production that would fit in just as easily on Netflix as it would anywhere else. Or you can do self-made. And I feel like if you're kind of spending money in between, you're throwing it away. We don't have to go through all of this again anyway. But if you're doing it yourself, it's the same process, right? So it's understanding how, or building a plan for how you're going to tell this story, figuring out what those buttons are to push on when you're sitting down and talking with people, practicing. Like if you're new to interviewing, practice. Find somebody, maybe it's a little weird, but find a friend or partner or something like that and sit down and conduct an interview about anything. It doesn't need to be about this topic specifically, but you should practice because the first time you do it, it's going to be a little weird for you, but you got to figure it out. And then again, don't put pressure on yourself as the interviewer to be perfect. If it's, a podcast or something specifically where people see you and hear you, that's a little bit different, of course. But for me, nobody sees or hears me in my work. And so not having to be perfect takes so much pressure off of how I deliver questions, how I think about how I phrase questions, and puts more freedom or allows for more freedom for how I'm going to phrase those next questions. And I'm not worrying about, do I sound perfect? Is this person across from me going to respect how I pronounce a specific word that's, not in my everyday lexicon? Whatever that sort of situation might be, take the pressure off of yourself. It doesn't have to be there. And you focus on what you're going to do and say next. Focus on what footage you're going to get. Make a shot list for B-roll. Like again, if it's self-made, great. I think that's fantastic. You don't want to sit there and have talking heads and the documentary style kind of content. That's not what you want. You want to see people doing things that are reflective of the content that you're capturing and how that is, we almost making a hero out of the goals of the association and showing that visually, because not everybody's going to sit down and listen to this with headphones on, but you show them an image. And again, it's multi-purpose. You use this footage everywhere. You take screenshots of it and have stills and for all sorts of other, multi-purpose content stuff. But, really kind of focusing on having a plan and knowing what you're going to do, especially at the beginning. And, if you're doing it self-made, couple practice runs before you do the real one. Maybe you don't pick your hero to go first, your best, absolute best number one story. Maybe,
Good.
you know, yeah, maybe you start with number three till you find your leg, till you find out, you know, once you sit down and edit this story, it's going to be different than anything you had planned for, especially at the beginning when you haven't done this a lot. But then you learn, you say, okay, this is our voice. You find it. You're not going to get it on the first try. But once you kind of do this once, twice, three times, you find your storytelling sea legs. And I think that's super important.
Great. So Corey, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just same as Cam. I agree with everything. And I think from first step, like an association that's considering doing this, that wants to do this, the most difficult question is, what story do you want to tell? And I think, you know, what we do at Ellipsis is really important, because we come in and we sort of help, you know, visualize that plan. Like, what is the best story here? Here's the topics on paper, but what is the human story? What do people want to watch? What is going to get, you know, a lot of views and attention? And, you know, maybe in the documentary world, a call for action. So yeah, I think really just when you're starting off the process, it does feel a bit overwhelming because there are so many stories. So I think that's the one thing that's the most challenging, but the most important to start with is, you know, what story do they want to tell, and go from there. And then the logistic stuff just comes together, finding people to come in and work together, people, director of photography to shoot it, producers, directors, like that will come together, but really honing in on that very first step of, what do you want to say? What do you want to tell?
Yeah, that's great advice. And I want to add something on self-made video. I do self-made video. And it's fine. I have a good software program that I have learned to use. Wish I could use it better. But what I want to say to the audience is this: if you're going self-made, make sure you have the time. It is very time consuming to do self-made video. I am a consultant. I work for myself. I can set my schedule to make time for it. But if you are trying to assign this to a staff person who already has a full workload, take a step back and consider adding a budget and talking to Cam and Cora about how a production company can help support you, because self-made is great. It's fun, but it's also extremely time consuming. So here's the formula I use for your consideration. It takes me 3 times the length of the raw footage to finish an episode. So if that episode is 30 minutes, it's at least 90 minutes of editing and production. Then you have to do the posting to wherever you're going to post it. You have to start doing the marketing. There's a lot of other steps that go into it once you capture that interview in the can. So keep that in mind before you decide to go self-made. And also another great tip, and you both have touched on this, repurposing your content. We live in a marvelous world full of lots of different software, and it can actually just pull your audio out too from your video. And you can also just share audio, especially in an interview, documentary style interview situation. That's something people can listen to while they're running on the treadmill or driving somewhere in the car, wherever they like to listen to things. So that's another tip, just from my perspective from the self-made world. Cam and Cora do the high-end HBO style stuff. So I think that that's a great thing to explore. So before we sign off, I do like to ask some fun questions. So Cora, you have a reality TV background. Has that helped you with association storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I started in this world right after college, I was put in a lot of situations that I think my first 4 years in this industry were very special and challenging, and every single day was something different. Every single show was something different. So that really prepared me for this, to sit down and talk to anybody about anything anywhere in the world, because that's how I started off, is just not knowing the next day what was going to happen until I showed up. And I think just that working in that way, and it sort of prepared me for a bit more organization here with Ellipsis. Reality TV is a bit messy, and it really prepares you for anything. So I think I'm very happy where I am. I would never go back to that world, but working on shows like Bridezilla or 90 Day Fiance or whatever it was, like that all sort of added to my excitement to be working on different projects and telling different stories anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, I'm going to have to work on what would the reality series be about association management. What would that title be? I think that would be a fun contest. So, well, as always, it's been a great conversation with both of you talking about how we can tell our stories better to get our message out. So, as you know, I like to ask my guests, what's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to talk with you some more and find out more tips on interviews, or maybe if they could work with you? So let's throw it over to Cam and ask him first. What's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today?
Yeah, I think particularly when it comes to interviewing again for whatever purpose, just having that respect, showing the respect for the person that you're sitting down and talking to is going to create a much better result for you, and giving them the space to tell their story and really, showing them that you care, showing them that you prepared, you put in the legwork, you understand, and that's going to be way more impactful than assembly line interview question asking from a paper or whatever. You're not going to get what you need that way, but really showing deference and respect and understanding and compassion and whatever else you need to the person you're sitting across from when you conduct an interview is going to generate some really powerful stories that are going to benefit your association.
And how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can check us out at ellipsis.tv, ELLIPSIS.tv, and we'd love to speak with you about your storytelling goals.
Great. Thanks, Cam. And Cora, what's your closing thought for the day?
Well, thanks so much for having us again. And I think just keep storytelling like at the top of everybody's list for, it's a really powerful medium to tell stories is through documentary style. And it is, I think, documentary storytelling really sticks with viewers a long time after they watch something, more so than maybe reality TV. So I think keep telling stories this way. It's important. It's powerful. It can be a call to action. It can make a lot of impact. And yeah, hope to see you again, do this again sometime.
Great. Thanks. Well, thanks, Cora. And thanks to you both, Cam and Cora of Ellipsis Productions, back again, and they'll be back in our 7th season in 2025. Share some more insights for us as our world becomes increasingly video driven. So I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Radio Free 501c. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization think differently about the world and bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. Let's have a conversation and see if we can work together. If you're interested in ethics courses or getting ready for the CAE exam in 2025, keep an eye on our website education page, as we'll be announcing our spring session schedule soon. And more fun information from Rogue Tulips. My first book, Association Chapter Systems from Frustrating to Fruitful, will be coming out on November 22nd, which is also St. Cecilia's Day. So help me celebrate my name day and order a copy for your favorite association executive. It'll be a great holiday gift. Even if you don't do chapter relations, there's a lot of information about relationship management. So check out my new book, my first book. Everybody's been asking me to write one or telling me I should. Well, now you brought it on yourselves. So I hope you buy a copy. So that's it for this time. We have to go rogue for now. On behalf of Cam, Cora, and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.